Good morning, everyone, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Nancy Crawford, Director of Finance, and joining me at the table is Deanna Sacco, our Deputy Director. We appreciate this opportunity to kind of briefly go over a few budget items in general and something about our process, and then we have a few comments we would like to make about our department, and then we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. I'd like to start actually by introducing our division managers. We have 8 divisions. We have 3 new division heads who have just started since the 1st of January. And I'll start by, although the mayor already acknowledged and introduced her, I'll just mention again, we have Nancy Kelly, who has joined us over here now, and as our new budget administrator, and just jumped right in January and went for it. With her also is Ted Schrey in the back, who's our budget analyst. And these 2 people, they put in a tremendous effort. They do year-round, but especially, in these, for about 6 months through the winter and up to this point, and in developing this budget and in producing all the documents and work papers that we have to help us take a look at it. And I'd like to acknowledge the former budget administrator, Gary Tom, who did retire at the end of December, however, shared many, many volunteer hours with us through January through March, and helped to make sure that we had a smooth transition here and that nothing in our budget suffered for having that changeover. Also joining us are one of our new administrators is our purchasing agent, Jeff Dansdill, right directly behind me, who just joined the county. And Naomi Odell was promoted to be our vehicle registration and licensing administrator, as she's sitting back over here. And as for those of you who were on the council before, you have all met Kay Oshiro, our controller, Mike Okamoto, treasurer, Scott Knowles, risk manager beside Mike, Stan Sitko, real property tax administrator, who takes the heat from the mayor if the values aren't going well, and in Kona, Ken Van Bergen is joining us from Kona. So, many thanks to all of these folks who are true experts in their field and make all the difference in helping our department, which is a pretty diverse one, operate and meet the needs of countywide, the departments, and the public as well. Just telling you about the budget process is very brief. The departments were told basically to maintain their current year budget with an allowance for costs that were beyond their control, electricity, utilities, other fuel perhaps. And they did provide a list of more like this is what we need, and in the form of supplemental requests. And we took what they submitted, and then as we worked to balance the budget, we cut what they had submitted, which was basically their bare bones, this is what we already struggling to live with budget. And so that's where they are today. And I know as you speak with them, they will tell you specifically some of the impacts of either the long term of cuts and especially the ones that specifically are hitting them this year. The budget did go up this year, and the primary items that added to that increase were the furlough adjustment going away, as we have mentioned. And so you see that in salary and wages in almost all departments because they've added that cost back in. We are not budgeting for any furlough adjustments in this budget. We also had a fairly significant adjustment in our debt service costs. Although The recent refinancing we did has really helped us in reducing debt service. We had this year, we just had a fortunate one-year low that we could take advantage of in balancing this current year's budget. And then as we transition into debt service on newer bonds, that has increased back up. And we have continuing increases like for retirement system, and we know also going forward some of those have already been programmed in, set by the legislature, and we have at least another year of that already preset increases to our retirement system contributions. So when you look at this budget and you see that it's gone up, but you take into account the things that are basically beyond our control, what you come to realize is that this is why departments had even further cuts in their budgets in order to limit the amount that we increased to live within our means, basically, with our current revenues. That's what we did for this March preliminary budget. And I just want to say, this has got to be, I probably said this every year, this has been the hardest budget that we have had to do. I think we really thought that by this year, we were going to see some turnaround, and while we see some great indicators in the economy, property values are really the last item to start reflecting those improvements in the economy, and they are not really reflected here, except in us basically holding flat. So I would just say that one other comment is just that it goes back to the cuts that you will hear about, is that we have unfunded positions yet again, and in some departments they're pretty worried about how that will impact their ability to provide services. In many cases over these years as we've worked to make this budget work, we have unfunded positions, thinking of that as a temporary measure, and then had to continue with that staffing shortage, and we'll mention some in our own department. We have also continued to defer equipment purchases, training, travel, computers, as we've discussed, that really could help employees be more efficient. But this is, we looked at a lot of alternatives and we had to make some hard decisions, and the budget we presented to you was the best that we could in the current circumstances. So this is a preliminary budget. We really look forward to working with all of you, and I am sure that there will be some changes. We have had, even subsequent to the budget, we've heard about some additional cuts in federal funding that impact, in particular, like our housing department, and we will be having to make some adjustments to the budget to help cover some of their costs. So the one other thing then I would just move to is to talk about the finance budget very briefly. Our budget this year in the March submittal is $10.2 million, which is an increase of about $400,000 from the last year budget. And the primary cause of that, again, is the ending of the furlough and the impact on our salary and wages budget. What isn't included in our budget that we very much need, and at this point have had to sacrifice, in the real property tax division, which is our major revenue producer, we have an unfunded valuation analyst position, which I had really committed to fund, and that's the direction we started in, but I'll tell you, when it came down to it, it wasn't currently filled, and it was unfunded. Also one clerk in that area. We also need to do a software upgrade for our real property tax software to IAS World, and we discussed this when I was in the real property tax ad hoc committee that Pete Hoffman headed up. which is where I made some commitments here about this. We thought we could postpone IAS World upgrade for a little bit longer, but circumstances outside of the county, we get costing data currently from the city and county of Honolulu, and it's not actually ideal in any case, but they are also going to discontinue that because all of the counties are switching over to using Marshall and Swift as the costing experts, and they will do costings for our island that are specific to the costs that are here. And this goes in, but we're talking about costing involved with the assessment of properties. In order to use the Marshall and Swift system, we need to have the IAS upgrade. So both of those items are not currently in the budget, but next year is the last year that city and county will be providing costing information to us. And so it's really essential to us to make that transition in both of those services. We also were not able to provide requested vehicles for them as replacement vehicles, and as their fleet has aged, it becomes harder to have good vehicles that they feel are trustworthy when they're in the field. And PC replacements, as we've discussed, we continue. If we find extra money at one point in the year, near the end of the year, we will help with that. But they're not budgeted for in the current budget. The one other area that I'll mention where we didn't put everything that we wanted to is in our vehicle registration and licensing. We have 2 driver license examiner positions, one in Hilo and one in Kona, that were previously unfunded, as we felt we could, at that time, we were doing okay without them. Well, we need them now and do not have the funding for them. And so that's another one that I really want to find funds in order to get those in. Examiners do both examinations, but they also work the driver license windows. And so they serve in both roles and will be essential to our efforts to try to improve the efficiency and the speed at which we are able to process the many state ID and driver license applicants that are coming through our doors. And they also are not currently budgeted for some PC replacements that they requested. That's the impact on our department that we think is really important in two revenue generating departments that really touch everyone on the island. And we will do everything in our power to get those items budgeted in the May submittal, but we also know, the reason they aren't right now is that we didn't find additional revenue at this time. But we will be investigating revenue options and look forward again to working with you as we finalize this preliminary budget. So that's my opening statement, and we would be happy to answer any questions you have about our budget documents or operations.
Any questions? Councilmember Willie?
Okay. Nancy, thanks so much for all you do, and Deanna. One other area was the ag specialist, real property ag specialist. Is that unfunded at this point? And just in terms of a lot of the ag issues, it would seem like if we could get someone in that position, it would be helpful. Any input from your end?
Absolutely, I'd like to input. That is the position we are talking about. We have 2 valuation analyst positions. Both were vacant. It's been a difficult recruitment finding qualified valuation analysts, but we have just interviewed for a regular valuation analyst. The position that I mentioned that is unfunded would be the ag specialist.
It's the ag specialist. Okay, that's a priority. And in terms of sort of putting off the GASB, again, is this affecting our ratings? I mean, what do we need, are there issues that may, problems if we put it off another year? I mean, sort of what?
I don't think that we're going to have problems, that putting it off another year is not going to be a problem with the rating agencies. However, we have expressed that we had a plan, and that plan was to start making contributions again. And I can tell you, we started out with our finance plan with something in that account. And as part of our budgeting procedures here, we were unable to leave anything in there because we are already taking away, vital items from our operating departments, and so right now it does not have any funding, but we would love to put some in there.
Right. I mean, I guess in my mind, if we're not going to this time, we have to have some really hard, concrete plan when we're going to start and how we're going to do that.
I agree.
And again, that's in my mind. There's how do we make do again with even the shrinking, and where is it going to come? It's even with the real property tax, we make adjustments and there we'll get some. We're not looking at how we deal with all of these essentials. And then in terms of just the training in the department, I mean, where is that? Do you feel there's sufficient money in the budget, just sort of bringing staff up to where they're really functioning at the highest level?
I'll let Deanna look at our specific numbers. I can tell you in general that we really increased our training budget at real property tax, and that was an absolute necessity.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't, in the new budget, increase it. We increased it for this year because we have all of our appraisers now, with the exception of one, have been hired probably within the last 4 to 5 years, when what we had before was people with many, many years of experience. And so we have put a lot of effort into training for those folks, technical training, both in-house, bringing people in when we can to save funds, sending them to certified classes where they can pass exams and be certified. We would like to continue that, and I believe that was trimmed somewhat.
I mean, Nancy's right. In fiscal year 13, we increased it with the new appraisers, but we increased it yet more in next fiscal year because we do have those new appraisers, and it is our largest revenue generating section. In addition, most of our other divisions have to do kind of low cost, no cost training. So webinars or the classes that the Human Resources Department puts on. So training has one of the things that has been sacrificed in most of the departments over the last few years with the budget cuts.
Right, okay. And I just lastly want to say that Nancy and I have been working together on the Real Property Task Force, and I feel a very collaborative way as me representing the council and I think we've pretty much got a vision of that and how we can then move forward. I believe that'll come up later this month, so proceed with that, and I think that'll help. So I just want to thank Nancy for meeting with me times and working on that, and she's been very open, and I think that we see things in a very similar vision. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Okay.
How you doing, Nancy?
Hi.
Well, Director, I just wanted to ask you, actually, first, that position. I'm looking it over, and there is the Geographic Information System Analyst 2 and the Real Property Valuation Analyst 3. And when I'm looking at the other thing, it says that the Real Property Value Analyst 3 is the vacant and unfunded. What exactly is this position?
You want to just answer it?
The Real Property Valuation Analyst 3, that's the last one on the page, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the ag specialist we've been referring to. So that to actually, look at the ag rates and determine, if they need to be adjusted, or just even to probably help a little bit with enforcement. But that's the position with the revenue available we weren't able to fund this year, but would very much like to.
Okay, so that's the unfunded position.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the Geographic Information System Analyst?
So that's a new position that came to us from the Department of Information Technology, IT, and she works with Stan and the appraisers on looking at maps and different things, trying to help them be more efficient in their job.
Now, let's say this position is
She actually helps our whole department, sorry, just to insert that.
Okay. Thank you. Let's say the real property valuation analyst 3 is funded, the ag specialist. Let's say that position is funded. How much of an impact will this position have?
It could have significant impacts. As you know, they look at the values. I don't think they've been adjusted in a while, the ag values. So it's time to do those again. And I don't know how much enforcement time they would have, especially in the beginning, but I am guessing the position could more than pay for itself, probably.
Oh, really?
If I can add also, in the recommendations that came from the IAAO study that were discussed in the ad hoc committee and that we'll continue to work on when we have our new committee going, there was the suggestion that we should have a lot more analytical work and reporting output to share with you folks, among others. And while we are bringing on one valuation analyst, it will really take, for the amount of extra analysis required, we would really be using both of these positions. While this is going to be an ag specialist, they will be generating a lot of analysis for us as well.
Thank you. There's one more thing. On your department goals, you are continuing a cross-training plan for employees for all core areas. Could you give me a couple examples between your divisions, how that is going on, that plan?
I think it's more within each division that we have multiple members that can, step in, especially on the critical task if someone is either on vacation or out sick or the position is vacant. One position we do have float around is our clerk 3 and our admin division, where when driver's licensing is short, we're able to send that person up to help with the cash register, taking the pictures and different functions that, they could help out with, just to help shorten the lines as much as possible. We have someone out on leave right now, so we're not able to continue to send her out, but we have been setting up other staff from vehicle registration, their admin division. So as much as possible, we try to help out, especially in the area of driver's licensing, where I think people notice the wait times more than anything.
Okay, well, one last thing is number 4, to continue an ongoing customer service and public relations program that facilitates interaction with the public and other departments. Which division does that really apply to? Because I don't see go ahead.
Pretty much applies to all the divisions. They many times they're invited to speak at different events. Real property tax was recently invited to speak to the real estate agents to help keep them up to date and informed, so that as they're working with their clients, that people know to file the homeowner's exemption or different things like that.
So who do I talk to get, let's say, someone to the community?
Nancy or I would probably be the best place to start, and we'd assign it to the appropriate division. We have some presentations kind of prepared already, and others, we'd be more than willing to prepare if we don't have one already.
Have you done anything for Puna?
Not.
I don't believe that we have. Mr. Hoffman took more advantage of us, I would say, in bringing out, in our taking advantage of our willingness to come out, and we did a couple of Budget 101 trainings, a little different than what we did for council, but with a similar idea of helping the public understand, that the operating budget and the capital budget aren't the same thing, and where money comes from, and what it's used for, and where it goes. And so we have a little training program like that we do, and we've done procurement training as well, although that's aimed more for potential vendors.
Okay, well, like Mr. Hoffman, I also will take advantage. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Ford?
We had our last property tax increase in 2008-9 cycle. How much additional revenue did that bring in?
When we increased the rates at that time, it brought in no additional revenue. It was actually just to keep our revenue the same as the prior year because the valuations were going down.
So you raised the rate, which was passed by that council. I did not vote for it, by the way. And it brought in no additional revenue. They brought in revenue, but the valuations had gone down, which equalized it, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. I have some problems with that, but I'm not going to deal with them today. Of the 40 recommendations and/or suggestions that was made during that audit of how we can do taxes differently, how many of them have been actually implemented?
Mrs. Ford, I did not bring that information with me today. A number of them were already in progress, or in at least one case, there was rather a misunderstanding between the gentleman who came and the practices we were actually following. But a number of those, training is an example of an item that was mentioned more than once. It constitutes more than one of the 40 suggestions, and that's certainly ongoing and has been emphasized. Documentation within the office. Some, though, are also about staffing, and obviously we have not made practice, although we are filling, one of the positions was vacant, and that is the one we're taking action on right now, have been for quite a while, and hope to have filled next month.
I'm probably more interested in those that were suggested in order to increase the revenue stream to the county. The ones that you've mentioned are mostly expenses to the county, and it's not that I don't agree with them, I do. But he had quite a few, and I don't know if this is going to be part of Margaret's committee. This is? Okay. Because I'm looking forward to hearing some of those suggestions. We've frequently hear from our constituents about the unfairness of the property tax, the way it's administered. And I would like to see some improvements in that. But so far, I think that's been over a year now, I'm not seeing any suggestions coming forward, and I'm just a little anxious about it. I'd like to see some of those things taken care of. So if it's going to be handled through Margaret's committee, then I'm going to just have to wait. But if you'd like to comment on some of the ones that are revenue generators.
Right, absolutely. And those were, that is the intention, to have a work group, because they are far-reaching and complex and may have some unintended consequences. We were talking about changing the real property tax code in most cases here, what they, with the idea of taking a look at exemptions and clearly taking a look at the ag program. And that is the one that is our highest priority right now. We have a number of those, none of which will impact this year's budget, but I would expect that we can see some changes coming forward beyond that. And these are all, basically, those are all items that will come to the council for council's consideration. It'll be just recommendations.
Okay. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing those, because it's been a while, and so far none of them have come forward to the council. And I'm not talking about the training and all of that. That's inside of your ballpark. I do have a question for you, though, and I brought this up to you guys being Deanna and Nancy, or one or the other of you, I don't even remember now. How much are we behind in our outstanding real property tax debt? Those that would go into foreclosure at some point in the future. How far behind? How many millions of dollars are we behind right now on those collections?
I'm not sure answering the right question, but our receivable at the end of last year was roughly $17.5 million, but that includes the properties within the last 3 years that we're not able to foreclose on yet. A property has to be delinquent 3 years or more for us to foreclose, and I don't have that exact figure in front of me.
Close enough. Yep. It's okay. It's close enough. Now, it takes 3 years to foreclose, and is there any kind of a federal or state law or a county law that says 3 years rather than 2 years? Because we've talked about this before, that I think we should be dropping this down to 2 years. What would prohibit us from dropping from 3 years to 2 years?
Corporation Council is still researching it, but they believe the only area that governs that is the county code.
Okay, if it's the county code, I would like you to provide me what section of the county code. I've asked this question, no offense, I asked the question months ago, and Corporation Council hasn't provided any of us the answer that as far as I can tell. They may be working on it, but the answer's not coming forth for me in a timely manner. That is our biggest revenue source. And if dropping it from 3 years to 2 years requires just a code change that we could do, it'll be a little tough on your department the first year, but by my calculations, and this is very gross calculation, that would bring in about $5 million the first year. Now, it's going to be kind of a one-time hit. You know, we're not going to get $5 million every year. Because then we're on a 2-year cycle. But you know, and I look at ways to increase revenue, and I see that 3-year lag, and I go, well, 3 years is too long. We need to drop it and get these people in. There are people, just for the public's benefit, there are people who pay very timely, and then there are people who are just a little slow on paying, and there's that lag, but they always intend to pay, and they eventually do pay before we get to the foreclosure. But it may, you know, all we have to do is pay off that 3rd-year debt, and you're still 2 years out, and we're financing that as far as our revenue stream. Now, we do charge them the penalties and the interest, so we get something from that. And the reason I had passed or tried to pass my last bill, which said, let's cut the penalties down, let's cut the interest down in half, but what I want to do is shorten the 3 years to the 2 years. And then for me, that was the reason I wanted to shorten the penalties and interest, so we could force that in. My bill did not pass, as we all know, but I'm now going to be looking again at shortening from 3 years to 2 years. So I would like to get an answer, and I would like to have an answer, say, in the next month. What is it we're going to do so I can do it? And I don't want to sit around here anymore waiting for that $5 million. I would like to get that going in front of this council. So please get me an answer.
If I may make one comment, and you did acknowledge that it would be tough on our department at first, but I got to say that it would be more than tough. They already, with the collection staff that we have and the tax sales, they put on 2 tax sales per year. They are at their max for what they can handle. They move as many properties as they can, and when they have their tax sales, probably at least 80 to 85% of the division goes down on that tax sale day and participates to make those tax sales effective. If all we do is change the law, I think we will just have a bigger backlog of foreclosable properties that aren't being foreclosed on. I think that additional staff would need to come with that change in the law.
Nancy, I would agree with you. But for $5 million, even if it's just the one-time hit and we keep more current at 2 years instead of 3 years, I think I could justify my own mind adding staff for you to do that. Now, I'm not talking 20 or 30 people. I'm talking some minimal amount, and you need to tell us what that is. But this cannot continue. We're working right now on bills for the Environmental Management Department, and whether it's a compromise or whatever it turns out, we're trying to get revenue coming into this county. And when I look at $5 million sitting out there, I can say, I can justify 1 or 2 more people to bring in $5 million that we can be using to get ahead here and also shorten the cycle of the foreclosures. It's not that I want to be mean or rotten or horrible, but we are now starting to pull out of the financial devastation that we've all encountered personally and collectively as a county and a nation. And we've got to start doing something differently. And that means we're just going to have to step to the plate. And, you know, a couple of staff positions to do this, I can justify that one. So please get us some answers so we can move forward on this one.
Thank you.
Madam
Go ahead.
Chair, can I clarify something?
Sure.
Earlier, I thought I heard Mrs. Ford say the increase, the 2009 increase, that was the year the mayor took office and the budget was in place. That was actually the year the rates were decreased. 2011 was the last rate increase, and that was the revenue neutral one. I just wanted to clarify the year.
Thank you. You're right about the year. I don't have a problem with that, but all right. Now, the last thing that I'm going to ask before I yield, please.
Okay, because I want to see if we have any other questions before.
Do our last one.
Okay.
Okay, I have one question. When I looked at the CIP budget, I found 17 duplicates in this budget. 17 projects with the exact same number, the exact same amount of money. And then when you read the things into the agenda items in, there was a comment from the mayor that there was a mistake in the CIP budget. Is this the mistake that he is referring to? 17 items duplicated in the CIP budget?
There was a letter of March 11th clarifying that, and that I didn't count them, that there were 17, but that the totals are correct, but some of the projects were listed twice. The planning department does prepare the CIP budget, so and I believe they helped the mayor prepare this letter, so that might be a better question for them.
I will ask them the question, and I would like to see it. I don't know how you can add this up and get the same number on the bottom line if you got 17 duplicated projects, but I will definitely ask them that question, and I yield.
Any other questions? I think you still have someone from your department.
I'll make one quick.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say, and this isn't partly in response to what Brenda was asking on the real property tax, is there were a few suggestions for minor items to come forward, independent of doing them in a more comprehensive way. And both Nancy and I agreed that let's not just dribble out 1 or 2 things here, but get the task force going and take a look at them on an interrelated level and not just do some minor things, whereas we have some big ticket items, in particular in the area of agriculture. And so that was, in terms of if there was any delay, that was partly my suggestion to not do minor items. Let's really go for the big ticket ones and get the task force going.
Thank you. And I'd like to just ask the council members if we use up, I'm just asking for the 5-minute time because we're, we have 2 more presentations, and if you want to, you have further questions for them, they are more than willing to meet with you, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So if any of you have further questions, please call upon them and you can have your questions answered further. If you, and you think of any more questions.
I think the next section on the agenda is the miscellaneous items, which is a separate tab. Nancy did kind of cover part of that in her opening remarks, and some of the questions on GASB 45 or whatnot are pertinent to that section, but we're happy. That's pretty much the section that has transfers to other departments, as well as all of the fringes and whatnot in there.
Okay, so that would be it then for that miscellaneous piece for the...
unless there's questions from the council members.
Okay, so do we have any questions pertaining to the debt service and benefits? Additional items? Okay, so let's take a 5-minute recess so the planning department can set up for their presentation, please. Thank you.